On today's podcast episode here on the Flip Empire Show, I'm going to be interviewing Clifford, known as the Cowboy Closer. Clifford, the Cowboy Closer Walker. He's a best-selling author, philanthropist, and also the founder of the Real Estate Corral Investors Network in Dallas, Texas. So check this out. Clifford got started in this business in 2019 and had so much success that he's actually now coached over 4,000 people to successfully start their journey real estate investing specifically through wholesaling, which is how I got started back in 2005. So we had a fun conversation. And one of the things we really got into was mindset and overcoming fear so that you can get started, right? And just applying a very simple, basic mental framework to anything that you're going after. We also talk about just some of his best secrets when it comes to cold calling and what makes him such an effective cold caller. And we kind of have a little bit of a dialogue there. There's different approaches that work. And so I believe you'll get a lot out of this conversation. So with that being said, guys, if you have an interest in self-storage and generating cash flow and building wealth and ultimately having time freedom, Storage Wins coaching community is literally the best community for you to be able to plug into, so that if you are somebody who is interested in storage but don't know much, or you don't know how to go about acquiring your first storage facility, our entire community and program is designed from taking you where you are to your first storage facility within 6 to 12 months. We just had a coaching client that did this in 4 months. Results are not typical. He put a lot of time, effort, and energy into it. But let us show you the way. Schedule a call over at www.storagewins.com, storagewins.com. And if I like what you have to say, we'll schedule a call and go from there. So with that being said, let's dive into episode 769 with Clifford, the Cowboy Closer.
You're listening to Flip Empire, the show committed to helping real estate entrepreneurs who want to build their empire without sacrificing their life. Your success and freedom starts now with your host, Alex Pardo.
What's going on, guys? What's going on? I have a new friend, Clifford, the Cowboy Closer Walker, in the house on the podcast today, guys. So excited to have him on the Flip Empire Show. And full transparency, so Clifford and I actually recently met. I want to say less than 3 weeks ago. We met in Tampa. He and I are part of a mastermind. This is actually a new community that I recently joined, filled with just some of the most well-known thought leaders, speakers, educators, authors, podcasters, real estate investors, and entrepreneurs within the real estate investing arena. So just a great community to connect. You guys know how much I value not just coaches and mentors, but being plugged into the right communities. And this is part of the reason, right? This is part of the reason I'm always like yelling from a megaphone to find your tribe, because you get to build relationships. And so Clifford, I've heard about him over the last year or so, and he and I got an opportunity to meet in Tampa, and here he is on the show. So brother, it's great to have you on, man.
Ooh, doggy, what is going on, bro?
I like that.
I am extremely excited and just honored and blessed to be here. And I mean every bit of that. I really do. So
yeah, man.
I'm excited to connect with you and meet with you and just see honestly how far and we can take our friendship and partner on things and do things together. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Well, so I want to first kind of give you your flowers. So if you've never seen or met Clifford, he's always rocking a really cool cowboy hat that I don't know that I could pull off, but like, I love the look. Right. And so
I think you can.
Maybe I can. Maybe this Cuban guy from Miami can pull off the cowboy hat. I don't know. Yeah. But so you're always rocking the cowboy hat. And so I introduced you as the Cowboy Closer. I gotta ask, because I don't even know, how intentional were you about branding yourself the Cowboy Closer, and how did that even come about?
It honestly came extremely organic. Number one, this isn't just a look. I'm a country boy. I ride horses. We do show steers. I love it. That's my I'm not going to say my way of life now, but no, it's in me. It's just who I've been way before real estate. But when I actually got connected to my very first mentor, you talk about getting connected to your tribe. Well, he showed me what to do and how to do, and I hit the ground running. In fact, I ended up getting like 6 deals under contract that first month of working with that coach.
Amazing.
And so my wife ended up just one day when we got another contract, she's like, I guess you're just the Cowboy Closer, aren't you?
Ooh.
And I said, you know what? I am.
I love it. So you just started running with it, and now you're Clifford, the Cowboy Closer Walker. I love it, dude. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Well, so look, that's a great jumping off point. Like we could take this conversation a lot of different directions, but you're an expert wholesaler, right? And obviously, like that's how I came up for the first 15 years. That was my bread and butter, wholesaling. And now you coach and mentor others on how they can achieve freedom through wholesaling in real estate. So you talk about 6 deals, I think you said in your first month, 6 deals under contract. Brother, how'd you accomplish that? Because a lot of people that want to get involved in real estate or are involved, fear holds them back, uncertainty, not feeling like they have all the answers. They just kind of struggle. Many people struggle out of the gate. Obviously, you found some success. What do you attribute that to? And then what would your advice be for those that are kind of stuck in their own head and they're letting fear get in the way?
Oh, I love it. I think for me, what helped me was just taking massive action. I remember reading Grant Cardone's 10X rule, and if anybody reads that book, it'll just make you want to bulldoze through a wall. And so that was just kind of the momentum that I had, just working hard. But specifically, I was hammering the phones. But I can even give you a little more backdrop if this helps the audience. Like,
Yeah.
I was a truck driver before I got started. Like, I had absolutely zero real estate experience. So if somebody's wanting to get started, don't worry. You do not need to have a lot of experience. But my career, I was extremely miserable. Like, I was driving over the road. I'm married. I have 2 daughters, and it was just taking a toll on my body. Like, people don't realize how sitting and driving for 11 hours a day
I can imagine.
will take a toll on your body. And so my health was feeling it. I was a lot bigger than what I am now. And it was just, I was miserable, to say the least. I'll leave it at that. And so I saw real estate as an out, as an opportunity for me to get out of the truck and into doing something that can be a lot more fruitful, a lot more beneficial, and a whole new way of serving people.
Okay. Okay. Got it. No, I really appreciate you sharing that. So it sounds like for you, like there was a lot of pain associated with that job. And I don't mean just pain physically, right? But I just mean like you wanted a different way out. And I find that is a critical component to those that I see succeed and transition out of a 9 to 5 or maybe out of doing something they don't want, is that Tony Robbins talks about humans are motivated by pain or pleasure. It's important that you, if you're listening to figure out which one you're motivated more by. I know for me, I'm more motivated by avoiding certain pain than I am by necessarily gaining pleasure. And in my corporate job, like there was a lot of pain there. Like I didn't want to work for somebody and have to ask for time off or vacation or this or that. Like I wanted more freedom. And so the pain of having to go get a job was a strong motivator for me. It wasn't necessarily the pleasure of making X amount of dollars. Would you say that's kind of where the bucket that you would put yourself in at that stage?
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. It was definitely me trying to escape that pain of my current reality. There's a saying, I'm gonna butcher it, but what is it? The change of pain is greater than the pain of staying the same or something. I don't know. I'm
Yeah, very similar to, yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about. Everybody's right. And I think that's such a true statement though. Like, when you really want to seek change, like picking up a phone and calling a seller is nothing. Nothing.
Yeah. If you put things in its proper perspective, you'll realize that like the fear that you might be experiencing, while it could be a real thing for you, it's really just looking beyond that and asking, hey, what happens if I don't overcome this fear? Right? Like that is 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10, it's significantly greater than the fear that's probably a made up story in your head most of the time. Right?
Exactly.
But Clifford, dude, 6 contracts in your first 30 days working with a mentor. First off, before I ask you the specific question I have in my head, it took me 2 years before I decided to invest in myself and hire a coach.
Mhm.
I've shared on my podcast for years. I always thought, like, why would I do that when I did 12 or 13 deals my first year? I can kind of just figure it out. And then I lost a bunch of money on my very first fix and flip in 2007. And it was the best deal I've ever done because I knew that had I had somebody in my corner that was a few steps ahead of me, I would have never gotten involved in that deal and lost 51,000 bucks. Right. That was in 2007. So I give you credit because it sounds like early on in your journey, you're like, let me find somebody to really like help me. Let me ask you that question first. How did you get to that point and how did you decide who to work with or who to hire to kind of show you the ropes in this business?
Well, it actually took me about 6 months. So I didn't
Okay.
come out the gate. Of course, I went to YouTube University and I was trying to do it that way. But I was really what was so interesting, in hindsight, 2020, right? Looking back, I would watch YouTube and I would hear somebody talk about cold calling, how that's the best thing that you can be doing. And then the next video playing would be somebody telling you, don't cold call. It's the worst thing to do. You should be doing text messaging.
Yeah, man, I
Right.
get it.
The crazy thing about all of that is they're all right. Like all of the marketing strategies work. But anywho, as a new young investor, I didn't realize that. And so I was just dabbling. And so for 6 months, I didn't get anywhere. And then I went to a local event here, in Dallas, Texas, where there were local investors here offering coaching, showing me what they're doing in my market. And so I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to make this happen. I have to make this happen. Let me just get connected to these guys who are in my backyard.
Yep.
Uh, and it was a blessing tenfold.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's one of the biggest things that people need to realize is that get coaching. Like, do not go and reinvent the wheel. Like, um, it's just that simple. Why would you go and fumble on your own when you can
Yeah.
have somebody that has the proven strategies, the proven track record to get you where you want to go?
That's it. I completely agree with you. So what would you say is the what was the roadmap to your success? See what I did there? As
I
far
saw
as as far as
that.
getting 6 deals under contract in the first 30 days of working with a coach or a mentor, like what was the catalyst for that?
Again, for me, it was that pain that was driving me right there, and the willingness to change and transform my mind, I think was one of the biggest things. But also the actionable steps that I took was just simply cold calling. Like I was working, sitting and driving for 11 hours a day. I would print off the pre-foreclosure list, whenever I got home. So I had that. And I would be sitting and dialing all day, every day on my phone, which I probably don't recommend while I was driving. But what else was I going to do? I was already sitting and driving. And then when I was waiting to get unloaded, at like some of these truck stops, I had the bed of my truck filled with bandit signs as well.
Wow.
I would be filling out bandit signs while they're unloading my truck. So whenever I did get home in a couple of weeks, I could put those bandit signs out. So it was just working like a dog, honestly. But that was the mindset that I was in.
Yeah. You know, what I'm hearing is that like you were going to figure out a way to make this happen no matter what. And if you guys take just that from this podcast episode, I mean, it can represent so much money for you, not just the rest of this year, next year, and over the course of your career, is that do not wait to have all the answers, right? But just taking, like Clifford was talking about, taking massive imperfect action, like figuring it out. I remember my first deal back in late 2005 was a pre-foreclosure list, and I was like sending out letters, like hand addressing the envelopes, and I sent out my first 300 and something letters to a pre-foreclosure list. I remember getting calls of people that were behind on payments, and I had a script that I got from like a marketing for deals boot camp, and I remember feeling very uncomfortable and awkward and just kind of fumbling my way through the conversation.
Yeah.
And then I scheduled my first handful of appointments, like belly to belly, like in the kitchen. And I remember feeling like an imposter, like, who am I to help these people? I don't know what I'm doing. I've never closed a deal, but I didn't let that stop me. And it sounds like you had a very similar story in that, whether it's filling out banded sides in the bed of your truck and then putting them out, driving the semi and then just being on calls. If you talk to people that have succeeded in real estate or in anything, no one has had all the answers up front, right? Like, even if you have coaching, like, there's still a certain level of uncertainty that you might face because you've never done it, but that doesn't stop us from succeeding, right? So that's what I'm hoping people get from this. But man, there's a lot of people that, yeah, go ahead, Clifford. I want to hear.
I know. I was just going to say everything's figure outable, right?
Yeah.
Like that's something that I say quite a bit. Like no matter what comes up, we can figure it out. You can figure it out. You just have to trust the process and do the work. And I would actually, hearing you say you started in 2005, you actually had it harder. Like,
I mean, I certainly didn't have YouTube University, right? Maybe
no,
YouTube was like starting around that time or like, but like it wasn't a thing like it is today, obviously.
no, I would venture to say now is the best time to be getting started in this industry. And I would ask you, like, just thinking back how much that technology and resources have grown
Yeah,
from
man.
2005 to now. Like you could literally go online and pull a list and be making calls within an hour, right? Like I'm pretty
Yep.
sure that it wasn't that simple of a process for you back in 2005. Like you had to jump through more hoops. So
Dude,
if anybody, yeah,
I remember going, like, literally physically going to the county to have to like get out like files, like physical files, and go through records to get information. Like, I'm not kidding.
yeah,
So yeah, dude, but I want to illustrate something, and I'm glad you brought that up because I can have a conversation with you, and your mindset, Clifford, is, dude, it's easy for anybody to get started now. Look at all this technology, look at all these resources, look at all this free training on YouTube. You can plug into podcasts like this one. Like, you have that mindset. Yet I can have the same conversation with somebody else and they could totally flip it and say, man, now's the hardest time to get started because look at the market and the interest rates and look at the level, look at the barriers to entry. Everybody's trying to get into real estate. It's the same situation. It's just the difference of how you look at it, right? And think about if I was to put you up to somebody who had that mindset, who do you think is going to go further and succeed, right?
okay.
It's not because me or you are any smarter than that person, because I can only speak for myself, but I'm not. Like, anybody can do this, right? It's just you're betting on yourself. You invest in yourself, whether it be through coaches, plugging into podcasts, the books we read. Those are the things that end up shaping us and helping us achieve whatever it is that we're after. So I wanna talk about. So we talked about some of your success early on. What were some of the challenges you had to overcome? Maybe what were some of the failures, and I put that in air quotes, right? Like, AKA the
Sure.
lessons learned that you can share with the audience.
So what's hilarious is when I got started, I was an extreme introvert. A lot of people can't believe it now, but I would be so shy and scared to talk to sellers. Like there was a massive learning curve that I had to overcome there because you think I really lived an isolated kind of life for the
Okay.
most part, sitting alone in a truck outside of my family. I
Yeah.
didn't do much talking to people, not that I couldn't have a conversation with somebody at a store or something, but typically I wasn't some, oh, hey, how you doing? And type of person. So
And you were gone for weeks on end, right? Because obviously I've
yeah,
never driven trucks, but like that's like you were gone. It wasn't like you were out for like a weekend. Like, it was what, couple weeks that you were on the road?
yeah, it's typically out 2, 3 weeks, and then you
Yeah.
come home for 2 days. They call it a 34-hour reset, and then they send you back out.
Ah, man, that's a rough lifestyle.
Yeah, but so just to put this in perspective, I was so nervous to talk to people. My wife, especially at like networking events, would have to pray with me to calm my nerves before
Mm.
walking into these events. Like, and so that was a big thing for me. And I messed up hundreds, if not thousands of phone calls with sellers. Like, I want y'all to be okay with that. Like, I put my boot in my mouth so many times, I can still taste the leather. Like,
Man. Yeah.
and I guess it helped me though, because I just kept falling forward, falling forward, falling forward. And I think that that's just what it's about.
Yeah, man.
Being
Yeah,
okay.
you were willing. One of my coaches says, in order to succeed, you have to be willing and lean into having awkward and uncomfortable conversations.
Mhm.
Right? Like you just you can't, if you succumb to your feelings, it's going to be very difficult to go out there and accomplish the things that you're probably, and if you do, I might actually challenge you and say, hey, are you thinking big enough? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So dude, what were some outside of mindset, right? And outside of just like feeling uncomfortable, having those awkward conversations I just alluded to. Can you think back to any like specific like major hurdles or challenges that you had to overcome like as you got started out as a real estate investor? Because you've been, by the way, for perspective, like you've been involved in this business what, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So what were some of the biggest challenges when you kind of think back over the course of the last 3, 4, 5 years? Does anything come to mind that you would like, hey man, this was a pretty big thing for me, and this is kind of how I went about this, how I overcame it.
I think there's a lot of little bitty things. Like, for example, understanding that not every deal is going to close, stuff
Mm-hmm.
that happen,
Yep.
stuff that can come up that's in your control and out of your control. That's number one. Number two, like, I was locking properties up too high. All right. A lot of new investors do that getting started because they're scared to make, a 70% offer or whatever formula they're following. Right. So they feel like the seller's going to lash out at them. And so they're offering way more than what they need to. That was a big thing with me as well.
Yep.
So I had to get comfortable making my offers where they needed to be, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding like, if I don't get it here, then I'm just wasting everybody's time. So
Yeah.
I don't want to waste
Right.
my time or their time. So
Yeah. Yeah.
don't try to force a deal. I see a lot of new investors getting started trying to force deals, right? Whether that be wholesaling or even flipping. Like, they know they need to be buying this house at this, but they're like, oh, well, if I do the rehab or if I can cut costs here on the flooring, I can pay this much.
Yeah.
And for you with flip a lot more flipping experience than me, like, that's a good way to get yourself in a in a
Yeah,
hole.
man. If you're banking on everything going right in a deal in order for you to make a profit, like you're putting yourself in a very, very dangerous position,
For sure.
right?
So it was just a lot of those little things that just took experience and time for me to learn and get comfortable with.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Okay. Well, man, your journey's been very interesting. Now, like what led you down the path of wanting to help inspire, educate others to get involved in this business? Because you also you teach others how to get involved in wholesaling, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Got it. What led you down that path?
It was it was something I fumbled into. It honestly was. Everything that's been a blessing in my life, I wish I could say I was super strategic about it, but it's just God's grace on my life and just
Mm.
opening up doors. But when I got started with my first coach and mentor, that I mentioned earlier, I was rocking and rolling, and a lot of people in his community were like, well, what is Clifford doing? Like, how is he getting these deals? And so I started inviting everybody over to my house, and we were just marketing. We called them marketing madnesses. And
Okay.
so literally we started having too many people in our house, and my wife was like, okay, we're not going to be having all of these strangers in our house. And so I got with the guy and he started renting out a conference room. So every month we would go and meet, and we would have our laptops and we're all just working together, like banging out calls, and people were listening to my calls and all of this stuff.
Wow.
And I really enjoyed helping people get started because in some of those events, I would actually say 90% of them, people were actually locking up deals. And then so it just kind of elevated into what it is. At some point, he asked me if I could just coach for his community. I did that for a little while, coaching over 4,000 people.
Wow, 4,000 people you've coached?
Yeah.
That's amazing, man.
And then we started our own community, the Real Estate Corral Investors Network. And so that's kind of how that journey started.
Wow, that's unbelievable, man. Isn't it? I love what you said, man, about God opening up doors, because I have that same belief system. As I always walk. I do my best to walk in faith, knowing that God's going to open the doors he wants me to walk through and close the ones I'm not meant to go through. Right. And I have that belief. So, man, the fact that you have coached about as many people in terms of, 4,000 people in 4 years, you're basically coaching, if you were to average it out, 4 or 5 years, about 1,000 people a year. That's clearly people aren't going to you if you don't know what you're talking about, and if you don't have their best interests in mind. I gotta ask, man, as we start to kind of wind down the show, Clifford, like, what is it that you are, like, tactically speaking? Like, I heard you talk about cold calling when you were in your truck driving days. Like, what is it that you are doing that is helping you get deals in today's market?
Still cold call to this very day.
So cold call's like your bread and butter. That's like your main marketing channel.
We still cold call to this very day. And we also do some of the PPL as
Pay per lead?
well.
Okay.
Yeah. Or our main two focuses right now.
Okay, so then I'd be a terrible podcast host if I didn't try to extract, like, the wisdom, because clearly you have a system or a mindset, maybe a combination when it comes. So give us a crash course on cold calling. And by the way, cold calling is one of three ways that I have gotten storage deals, and how one of the ways that I coach our coaching clients in our Storage Wins community is cold calling, because it's effective, it's free, it just requires time, energy, and effort, right? So I'm curious, man, like, how can people think about cold calling, approach cold calling? What's your mindset and your strategy as you're just calling complete strangers?
First thing, when I say with cold calling, I believe every single person should cut their teeth on cold calling getting started. I'm
Okay.
sorry, that is not an industry norm, or it's not a sexy marketing channel, but it works. Number one, it's an old school method and it absolutely works. Number two, you have to get your jitters out. Like, I think about how much I sucked when I first started. And I mean, I don't want to say this for you, but when you very first started and you started having those first 10 conversations, how did those conversations go? Were you a little nervous, or you just nailed them out of the gate?
I was nervous. I was uncomfortable. I was feeling awkward. Like I said, I felt like an imposter. But man, again, what I wanted on the other side was a lot greater than that fear of just, like, looking stupid or sounding stupid or whatever. So I just did it.
Exactly. But so my point is, anybody getting started is a little bit nervous at the beginning. We're trying to find our rhythm. We're trying to find our footing. We're trying to find our voice in this industry. And so you want to get all of those jitters out at the lowest cost possible, if not free. When you start talking about direct mailing campaigns, PPL campaigns, and TV ads, and all this fancy stuff, and you start dumping, $5, $10, $15,000 a month in marketing, or even more, right? Because that's minor for some of these guys. Like, that is not the time you want to be learning how to have a conversation with the seller. You're spending that type of money. And so no matter who comes on working with us, they all have to spend some time on the dollar, hammering out calls, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because it builds the grit, it builds the confidence, it helps them to overcome a lot of the objections and just get comfortable with it. So
how are you? It does answer the question. What I'd like to go is a step further. Like, how do you typically approach the first 30 seconds to a minute of a cold call? because I think if we can help people get over that initial hurdle, then the rest
Mhm.
of it's just a conversation. But I think the initial, first
Oh,
10,
for sure.
15, 30, 45 seconds is probably the toughest part of the cold call. What's the strategy or the method that you use in order to, because let's be honest, like when I get a cold call, like I'm not, I'm trying to be nice, but I'm trying to get off that phone as quickly as possible. You
For
know what I
sure.
mean? So talk to me. How do you approach a cold call initially?
Super quick. My intro needs to be quick, sweet, and to the point. So I'm gonna call and I might say, for example, hey Alex, my name's Clifford. I'm calling about your property over on 123 Main Street. I'm reaching out. Would you be open to a cash offer on your property? You're gonna tell me yes or no
Mhm.
in that second. If yes, then I'm gonna say, well, did I catch you at a bad time? Right? If you're in the middle of spending time with friends or family, or you're at the grocery store, now is not the time to be talking about selling your property. I'm going to have, I'm not going to have your undivided attention, right? So if you say, hey, Clifford, this is a bad time, well, then I'm going to schedule a callback time. If you say, hey, it's a perfect time, then now you have opened up the door for us to have a full blown conversation about what's going on.
Yeah.
Too many people, their intro is long and drawn out. I've heard people say they'll ask, or the seller will say, hey, this is not a good time. Well, I just want to ask you a few questions about the property. That is the worst thing you can do.
Mm,
Like the seller literally just told you now is not a good time. So
yeah.
you could literally just say, well, hey, Alex, when will be a good time this evening? I can give you a call back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because most people aren't sitting in their chair twiddling their thumbs waiting on the phone to ring.
Yeah.
Somebody is doing something. I don't care if they're watching TV, cooking, playing with the dog, they're doing something.
Yeah. What strikes me, Clifford, is, and I think this should hopefully feel comforting to those listening and watching this particular show, is that there are so many ways to skin a cat, right? We've all heard that saying, like, there's a million ways to skin a cat. There's so many ways to approach cold calling and have success. Like, my approach is a little bit different. Like, there's some similarities and there's also some differences. And yet, we've both had success cold calling. And I think if I was going to really strip it down, like and first of all, whenever I do cold calling, one of the things I share with our Storage Wins clients is I like to stand up. Like right now, I'm standing. The
Agree.
energy in your voice is going to project different if you're standing and you're smiling. So
Mhm.
I've always said people can feel a smile on the other end of a conversation. So, and I also have this mindset that I'm going to connect with the person. Now, one thing, by the way, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think it's super important to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. I always say identify who you are and why you're calling in the first 10 seconds.
Yeah.
I think the slight difference in the way we approach it, and it's not a right or wrong, because clearly, man, you've done a bunch of deals and you've worked with a lot of people, is I don't I don't give people a reason to get off the phone. Because for me, in my experience, every time I've asked, like, is now a bad time? I feel like inevitably, at least, again, for me, maybe you've had a little bit of a different experience. I feel like 80, 90% of the time they say, yeah, it's a bad time, right? Because they don't know who I am, even though I've said, hey, I'm Alex and I'm calling because of XYZ. I also try to share with people that try to come across as non-threatening as possible, because it, like, when we call storage facilities, like, I don't, for that they could be thinking, oh, is this the tax man? Is this is it bad news? So
For
right out of the
sure.
gate, I try to let them know, hey, this is a friendly conversation, like, so those are just a few little things I'll add in here. Here's the point. Whether it's kind of the approach I take or the approach Clifford takes, find your groove, right? Like, you're going to figure out what works for you and what you feel comfortable in. But I think more than anything, it's the mindset going into a conversation that oftentimes is going to determine the outcome of that conversation.
Oh, 1,000%. And I hope people took heart or really notice when you said smile and stand up. I do the same. I didn't say it, but I can't explain it. People feel your energy.
Yeah.
Like they feel it through the call. They feel it when you're around them. Like whatever energy that you're putting out there in the world, like if you're putting that self-doubt, like, oh, they're not going to want to talk to me. Like they're not going to want to talk to you. Like
That's
that.
right.
Well, you're going to get like just that alone. I promise y'all, if you stand up and smile when you're making your calls, it'll help 1,000%.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah. You know what's another thing, brother, that I've shared in our coaching community is don't be attached to the outcome of the conversation. In other words, I'm not trying to buy their storage facility on that initial call. Just like as if when I met my wife, I wasn't getting down on one knee the day I met her and asked her to marry me. Like I just got to know her, right? And it's kind of the same. So take the pressure off. Like you're not trying to buy the house. And if you have what some people call in sales commission breath, right? Where you're like,
Yeah.
you're so eager and anxious because you got to close the deal and you got to make money. Like it's not going to work. So take that pressure off and it's just a conversation, right? And dude, like, I'm glad that you echoed my thoughts on the energy because as an example, imagine if I was the host of this podcast and I was like, hey guys, we're going to talk to Clifford today about real estate. It's like if I was low energy, if it was like, dude, people would like tune out. Like you'd probably be like, oh, this is weird. It's like,
Yeah.
like, so energy is important, man. People definitely feed off of it.
Oh, for sure.
So,
But yeah, it is just a quality conversation too. There's just so many nuggets there where people would really be mindful of. And I think it's the little details that matter,
Yeah.
focusing on having a quality conversation. I tell people this. I believe what we're doing, and I mean this to my core, I believe we're building generational wealth by serving other people. That is our main focus. How can I serve you? So when I go into these conversations with the sellers, if I focus on the serving aspect of things, it actually alleviates any pressure of me needing to be some type of grand closer. It relieves any pressure of the commission breath, as you mentioned, right? Like I'm here to serve you. If we're a good fit to work together, great. If not, that's great. I'm here as a resource if you need me to.
Clifford, you know why? Because it's pointed outward. It's not pointing inward. It's about serving them. It's not about trying to be self-serving.
Yeah.
So brother, this has been a fun conversation, man. Man, I'm pumped for you, dude. Like to have gotten involved in this business 5 years ago and to have had the success you've had and just coaching the amount of people you've coached. Tell us where can people connect with you, kind of plug into your world, find out what you have going on. I saw on Instagram, it looks like you're pretty consistent putting out content there. So yeah, just kind of talk to us about your world, Clifford, and where people can reach out and find out more about you.
Social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I'm really active on YouTube and Instagram, Clifford the Cowboy Closer. I have like a free PDF of 5 steps on how to get started. I can share to you, cool. Send it to your audience if you like. But no, I'm not hard to find.
Okay, awesome, man. Well, guys, definitely connect with Clifford the Cowboy Closer Walker on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and just follow along. And one of the things that, man, I really appreciate about you is that, like, I think we have a lot in common in that, like, we tend to not necessarily overthink things and just like, hey, man, let me just do it. Let me it's okay. Embrace the suck. Embrace feeling uncomfortable and awkward. As an example, with cold calling or whatever it might be, because everything you want is on the other side of that is that fear barrier. So, guys, really appreciate you. As always, I so value your time and energy and for plugging into the Flip Empire show. A little bit over 8 years running here. And I want to say this is episode 769. I think this is episode 769. So just, that's not possible without you guys. And then selfishly, I get to connect with cool people like Clifford. And so, make sure that you're subscribed so that every single Monday morning you're notified when a new show comes out, and I look forward to connecting with you on the next one. Take care, guys. Hope you enjoyed that episode, but before you go, I've had a lot of people recently reach out to me wanting to learn more about Ascend, wanting to understand how the mastermind component works, how the coaching relationship works. And so right now we're actually on a waiting list, but what I would encourage you to do is if you think you're the right fit and you think you could benefit from being a part of our community, head over to ascendyoursuccess.com, watch the short video, and then just click the apply to join button below. And then we'll be in contact with you if and when a spot opens up. So really appreciate you listening to Flip Empire here, and I look forward to connecting with you on the next show. Take care.